Do you ponder your mortality? Are you afraid of death?
I do think about it sometimes. I mean, it does pop into my head sometimes. Just the fact that, I'm 53. So if everything goes great, I have less than 50 years left. If everything goes great, like no car accidents, no injuries.
But it could
Yeah,
happen today. This could be your last day on this
could
earth.
be.
That's kind of a stoic thing to meditate on death. There's a bunch of philosophers, Ernest Becker and Sheldon Solomon. They believe that death is the at the core of everything. Wrote this book, Warm at the Core. So does that come into play in the way you see the world?
I think having a sense of urgency is very beneficial, and understanding that your time is limited can aid you greatly. I think knowing that this is a temporary time, that we have finite lifespans, I think there's great power in that because it motivates you, it gets you going. I think being an immortal, living forever, would be one of the most depressing things, particularly if everybody else was dying around you. And I think one of the things that makes life so interesting and fascinating is that it doesn't last. That you really get a brief amount of time here. And really, by the time you're just starting to kind of figure yourself out and who you are and how not to screw things up so bad, it's like time's up.
The ride's over. What about from your daughter's perspective? Do you think about the world we're in now and what kind of world you're going to leave them?
I
And
do.
do you worry about it?
I
Or
do. Yeah, I do. I do when I see these protests and riots and chaos and so much anger in the world today. And then particularly today, I think because of the pandemic and the fact that so many folks are out of work and through no fault of their own and can't make ends meet, and just people feel so helpless and angry. It's a particularly divisive time. It's a particularly turmoil filled time. And it just doesn't seem like the world of a year ago, even. Just feels very chaotic and dangerous. And it's a small thing, like in terms of the possibilities of things that could happen to the world, like a pandemic, like the one we've experienced. It really just doubles the amount of deaths on a bad flu year. So it, relatively speaking, is a small thing in comparison to super volcano eruptions, asteroid impact, a real horrific pandemic, or one that really wipes out millions and millions of people. It's it's stunning how fragile civility is. It's stunning how fragile our society really is. That something like this can come along, some unprecedented thing can come along, and all of a sudden everybody's out of work for 6 months, and then everybody's at each other's throats, and then politically everyone's at each other's throats, and then with the advent of social media and the images that you can see, with videos of police abuse and just racial tensions are at an all-time high, to a point where, like, if you asked me just 5 or 6 years ago, like, have racial problems in this country largely been alleviated, I'd probably say, yeah, it's way better than it's ever been before. But now you could argue that it's not. Now you could argue it's way worse in just a small amount of time. It's way worse than it's ever been during my lifetime. While I'm aware of it, obviously when I was a young boy in the '60s, they were still going through the civil rights movement, but now it just seems very fever pitched. And I think a lot of that is because of the pandemic and is because of all the heightened just tension. The way what I likened it to is road rage. Because people have road rage not just because they're in the car and no one can get to them, but also because you're at a heightened state because you're driving fast and you're driving fast. You have to make split second movements, and so anybody doing something, you're like, what the? People go crazy because they're already at an 8 because they're in the car and they're moving very quickly. That's what it feels like with today, with the pandemic. It feels like everybody is already at an 8. So anything that comes along, it's like, light it all on fire, burn it down. Like, that's part of what I think is part of the reason for a lot of the looting and the riots and all the chaos. It's not just that people are out of work, but it's also that everyone feels so tense already and everyone feels so helpless. And it's like, doing something like that makes people, it just it gives people a whole new motivation for chaos, a whole new motivation for doing destructive things that I've never experienced in my life.